Since 1994, the Arts Commission has used Young Artists at Work, or YAAW, to offer unique summer apprenticeships to young, aspiring artists around Toledo, Ohio. Teaching diversity, creativity, and job skills, YAAW apprentices get hands-on experience making public murals, saleable artwork, and pretty much anything awesome that you'd want to learn as a young artist. Overall, YAAW encourages teens to use their art to be active in their communities. Issues that we're all concerned about take on a different meaning when you're an artist. YAAW Talk is a podcast about them. You just can't beat the arts in Toledo. It's the topic at and around the clock. YAAW Talk.
Season 2.
Welcome to YAAW Talk, the podcast about topics that mean the most to young artists. Having inspiration is something many people have. In this episode, the apprentices talk about whether or not they have an artist they admire, if they take inspiration from other works of their art practice, and who do they make art for, and how Toledo public art inspires them. Let's hear what they have to say.
So, switching gears to what is your inspiration? So, who's an artist that you might admire or take inspiration from?
I know I don't take inspiration from specific people. Usually I take my inspiration off Instagram, and I follow like a ton of different accounts, and just scrolling through my feed, I mean, some of these people that are just like amazing, and I know I'll take a lot of inspiration from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of branching off. I know that like I take a lot of inspiration from like kind of art I find on the internet, and I know I follow like plenty of like different art accounts, and like some of them like influence my style, but like all at the same time, I think a lot of my like childhood cartoons and media like maybe took an influence into it. So
that totally makes sense. Like what you grew up on is what is comforting to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think, Olivia?
I was just thinking, like, I've been thinking about it a lot. I associate myself with certain objects that, like, show up in my art. And, like, I realized that looking back on a lot of the music videos and the YouTube videos that I watched when I was younger, it's, like, right in line with that. It just makes a lot of sense, the visuals that I enjoy and want to consume today.
I'm curious, because you have such, like, a distinct style, if that, like, where that kind of came about, or, like, what age or period, or was there something that kind of clicked for you?
I mean, I never really thought of myself as an artist, so I purely did it for myself. Mm-hmm. So I guess it is, like, not to mention last year's theme, but very, like, introspective and personal and kind of a revelation of letting everybody else see what's on the inside.
Yeah, which is very colorful.
Yeah. Sad, but colorful.
Yeah.
It's all across the board.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we like the combination of everything.
My dad, for sure, is a good, like, he does graffiti art, stuff like that. At Rec Room Remixes on Instagram, check him out. He's cool, and he also sells shoes, so.
We love a plug.
I know. Yeah, so him, he's really cool. He's always been, like, an inspiration. I think for some reason, like, a lot of watercolor artists, I don't do watercolor, I do digital, but, like, yeah, and mainly just people who, like, create stories with their characters. It's like, instead of just putting a girl on a paper, like, she has, like, a backstory and stuff. That's, yeah, so.
Yeah, that definitely seems like what you're interested in, like, character design and everything. Yeah. I feel the same way in that, like, my mom used to teach art at a camp in the summers, and not necessarily that I follow her style, but I definitely admire and try and practice the way that she will just jump into any project. Whether or not she has a ton of background in it, she's not, like, scared off by hard things. Yeah. And so that's what I try and do in my art, and use materials I've never done before, because I do a lot of 3D. So you just kind of touched on this, but for everyone else, like, do you feel like you make art for yourself or for others, almost as, like, gifts or how to show your love, or do you make it to sell?
I definitely make art for only myself. I do share my art on social media, but I am not thinking of anyone else when I'm making my art. Like, it's what I'm feeling in the moment, like whatever I want to create. It's just what I want. So
I know outside of work, like me and Kai mostly work on like personal pieces, and like it's not necessarily like we're doing it for like a specific cause, unless like maybe like we feel like we want to.
Yeah, I really admire that because I think a lot of times I have a hard time separating that and just deciding to like sit down and do something for myself. I think I often project my art even just as like gifts. I have a hard time keeping it for myself. It feels like guilty or not like it has enough of a yeah, like it doesn't have enough of a purpose. But you agree?
It's hard having eyes on what you make because as artists we want to sell and we want to make a living out of what we do. So you have to start thinking about like, would somebody buy this? And every time I make something like just as a draft or just for myself, I'm like, oh, I have to make this so other people like it.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to separate that.
Yeah, you kind of have to like filter through like your art and kind of make sure you don't incorporate certain things, but you incorporate this and that, which is marketable and all that.
I'm really the other way around. I usually tend to make art just for myself. Like all the art I make is like, I'm just gonna put these thoughts on the paper and they're all my thoughts. And if people like them, then that's good. And if they don't, I like it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's how I think.
Yeah.
I think some combination of all of this is probably like what makes the most successful artists or what leads to successful practices, like keeping your integrity and keeping your style and not giving too much into like clients or the outside opinion, but then also being able to like market yourself and everything. Yeah.
How often do you find yourself like consciously taking inspiration from artists?
All the time. Like
Yeah,
recently we went to the art museum and just like looking at the paintings, I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be such a cool thing to implement or try out. Like I feel like every time I see something,
Like Pinterest, that's like my
Yeah.
best friend.
Yeah.
I have like a whole bunch of like Pinterest boards of like inspo and stuff like that. So yeah, like all the time.
Yeah. So do you guys feel like you mostly make art for others as gifts or as kind of like just to show them or for yourself or to sell?
I feel like most often I make them as gifts for people because it's like a material thing that is like thoughtful and like shows how much like you put in work for them and it's also something they would enjoy. So I like making art for other people.
Yeah. I'd say definitely for myself right now. But like I said, like I would like to have a presence on social media with my art. So maybe that and but still making it for myself. Like I don't want to get too caught up in like making it for other people and focusing on, you know, that side of it. But selling it would be great. I mean, yeah, that's money doing what you love and having people who want to buy something that you've made is really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like the biggest compliment.
It really is.
I think especially if it's like a stranger and you know it's not as a favor, it's just purely because they really admire the work you do.
Exactly.
But yeah, I often find myself like if I have something I want to share with someone or some big feeling I feel towards them, I will usually make them something because it's kind of like a way that I show like I put my time in you.
Yeah, playlists.
Totally. Yeah, not even just art, but just kind of like positive actions and things like that.
I rarely ever make art for other people. How does the public art of Toledo inspire you?
I think it creates a beautiful, like, just kind of scene around. And I don't live in Toledo, so I don't see it all that much. But whenever I'm, like, in Toledo, I'm just like, wow, I love all, like, the art and stuff that's around. It's just, like, cool to see other people's art just all around the city.
Yeah, it's just like thinking about like a mural, like with the RGB and stuff, like we had to avoid certain things, and even though like it looks like with some of the murals like within Toledo, like it takes kind of like color influence at least, not necessarily like theme, but yeah.
I've been exploring more of like the smaller public artists that like big murals and like statues and sculptures, that's like what we think of when we think public art, but like there's this artist called Monkey Gnome who leaves like sculptures of this little monkey gnome that he made everywhere and he paints them and they're so cool. And then Street Spun who does like the yarn bombing and like I love how people develop their own individual style, but like they are Toledo, like they are icons, and they make themselves a part of this whole community. It's such a creative way.
And like, just like if you should think back to like 8th grade when I would like go around like school and draw like either sheep on chalkboards or like with the white erase boards with like markers.
It's like your trademark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it definitely inspires me in the sense of just gets me thinking about art even when I'm not consciously trying to, and also just in big murals and in smaller works that aren't necessarily paid for or commissioned, it makes you just feel like I appreciate this, so people must appreciate my art. And so it just kind of makes me feel seen.
That's very similar to how I feel, because I've worked on multiple public art pieces and murals around Toledo. So when I see other people's art, I really appreciate it more because I know what it's like to work on a big piece like that with other people. And if I can imagine what it's like to work on it by yourself, it must be a lot. So I can really appreciate the art around Toledo, and it gets me inspired. It's like someone put all their time, all their thoughts into this piece. I can put something into my own.
It's not often that I really like see public art, I'm gonna be honest. I live in Old West End, so a lot of the times it's things on like buildings or like yarn on like trees and stuff. And so it's nice when I do see it. I haven't really gone out of my way to see it though. So I'm sure there's some like gems that I'm missing. One thing I think that all of the art in Toledo is very colorful. I like that a lot. There's a lot of blues, there's a lot of reds that I've noticed, especially in like downtown. When we went to Imagination Station, did our little public art tour, like we were noticing like a lot of red. Well, I was. So yeah, I like the art here. I think there should be more so that, it's like, oh, yeah, that. But usually driving down the street, I'm not going to see a whole lot of art, but that's okay.
I actually live in Michigan, so like our public art tour was like one of the first introductions I had to a lot of the public art in Toledo, and it was really nice because where I live, there's nothing like that anywhere. So even just going into Toledo and like seeing murals on buildings or like seeing the public like statues and everything, it's really inspiring, and I think it helps like pick up a lot of people because it is really colorful.
Yeah.
And, like we've seen a lot of murals in like parking garages and like sides of buildings, and I feel like it just kind of helps make people's day.
I think if you want to like yeah, you saying that, I was thinking about like where I live and how a lot of the art on the buildings is like graffiti and considered like vandalism and stuff. I think maybe people don't think about the art in Toledo because there's not a lot of like paid for, commissioned, and all of that stuff. But like there's art, there really is art everywhere.
So kind of just to wrap this up, we want to hear maybe from all of you, if you're up for it, when does inspiration strike for you? Might be a thinker.
I have like very weird moments of inspiration. I find myself trying to force it a lot of the time, and when that happens, like I'll try to make something, and nothing that comes out is like good, or I want to continue on. Even like looking at art, it does help, but ultimately it's just like a kind of a feeling that I just have to have.
Yeah.
I know that like sometimes like I'll think of ideas but I don't necessarily want to get around to them because I'm like worried about like putting that pencil or whatever to paper, and but there's times when like I don't really have any ideas but I want to draw really bad, so
I feel like I don't always have motivation to make art, and sometimes it makes me feel like I'm not an artist because I'm not constantly creating. But every once in a while I'll hyperfixate on like a phrase or a word or an object or a lyric or something, and I just like it's an itch I have to take care of.
Yeah, I think I definitely feel the same kind of to some degree of all of your thoughts, but especially like I think it was the Heart graphic designers were saying that basically there's like a gap between when you feel like you have really good taste or ideas or concepts, and then the ability to actually execute them. And I think I'm always so afraid that I'll like end up in that gap where I have such an interesting idea, but like it almost makes me procrastinate starting because I feel like I'm not good enough to make it look how I want it to. And I think that's, the same with like forcing myself to just create.
Yeah, honestly, advice that I should really take is just to start.
Yeah, for
Starting is
sure.
always the hardest part of anything.
Boredom for me is like one of my greatest enemies. Like if I'm bored, I will probably not be able to create anything.
Really? Why's that?
I don't know. I just feel like when I'm bored, I just feel kind of drained, and I'm just like I'm just not feeling creative.
I understand what you're
Stuff.
talking about.
Yeah.
Like sometimes when I'm bored, like I won't necessarily know what to do, but like at the same time, like I might think, hey, let's work on some art, but like it turns out like kind of bad because I'm not necessarily putting any ideas into like what I want to do.
Yeah.
In this episode, YAAW apprentices talked about how different variety of artists and Toledo Public Art has inspired them within their own art practices. Thanks for listening.